All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another webinar today hosted by Seek Thermal and Andy Starnes of Insight Fire Training. We have Andy here who brings over 30 years of experience from his career as a battalion chief in Charlotte, North Carolina. So Andy, thank you for being here today to talk with everyone and teach them about thermal imaging tips for success. If you have any questions, please just type them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them in a timely manner throughout this webinar. And with that being said, Andy, please take it away.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, we'll get started. So this webinar is called Thermal Imaging Tips for Success, and it's basically something we designed out of restructuring our program a few years ago. We were teaching many technical aspects of thermal imaging, but failed to connect to the tactical. So we restructured it a few years ago. It's been very refreshing. It takes things that are complex and makes them very simple and experientially relevant. There's a lot of information. We will go through as much as we can. There's also over 23 QR codes embedded in this, or resources and videos, and there's a QR code at the end that can give you a copy of the presentation. So as Jordan said, my name is Andy Starnes. I've been in the fire service now 34 years. I retired 2 years ago as a battalion chief. I currently am the owner and founder of Insight Fire Training. Technically, my wife is the owner. She transitioned to an S Corp, and she is the official owner now. So I always like to mention that because she's the boss. We have trained across the U.S. and in several countries. We developed the first collegiate-based thermal imaging program and certification for firefighters you can do online. That's what that QR code takes you to. It's accredited through Western Kentucky University and peer-reviewed by Kentucky Thermal Institute and sponsored by Seek Thermal. So you can get that online, get a certification, and use that to assist your department for a relatively inexpensive amount of money. It's just your dedication and time. My life is pretty simple. That's my faith, the family, and the fire service. And one of the things we try to do is give back. If you're interested in helping other firefighters give back, I'm on a nonprofit. This QR code here goes to 501 Task Force. Anything from a $5 donation to anything you want to give will help support firefighters in need. We turn around and give back through our company. So please consider those that are in need around you. There's a lot of people hurting these days, and we're trying to help as much as we can, like we're doing with free content development partnership with Seek Thermal. So let's talk about what we're here to learn today. Many of you are familiar with data that I like to quote, data, data, data. I like to say, bring me data, not opinion. So most of the data I quote is either statistical data, research data, or line of duty data, and I like to combine them all so you have a broad view, so we're not just pulling from one source. This particular survey was done in partnership with Firehouse Magazine with several other firefighters or fire service experts, and I put a few highlights in here for you to consider as we move forward, because I travel quite a lot, and one thing that consistently see is that first bullet point, is that over 25% of the firefighters in the U.S. receive zero thermal imaging training. They just hand it to them, expect them to figure it out. While the remainder got 1 to 3 hours as an average, and 56% of them receive zero live fire training. The first word in tip is thermal. If your firefighters are not receiving thermal imaging training in a thermal environment where you go from low heat to moderate heat to high heat to see how it performs and how they will perform, you're doing them disservice and actually violating 3 different NFPA standards. So firefighters don't believe in NFPA until accountability comes calling, and then they ask who was responsible for training. And one of the things we understand now is firefighters are not aware. We need to help them become aware and help those in charge be aware that this is not an option. It's mandatory they should receive the training, because one of the bullet points they bring up in this, why they need training, is over 25% of them were not aware of temperature measurement and accuracies. Many firefighters today are still using this as a thermometer. It can be several hundreds of degrees off. It doesn't see gases. It doesn't see through things, which we'll expound upon as we go through. So I like to quote people. So Frank Discusco is one of the ones I quote, and he has something called the 3 U's. People are either unaware, unable, or unwilling when it comes to change. Every place we go, we ask the same questions. And these are the same things that we discover with firefighters. They were unaware of temperature modes or high and low sensitivity, or what we're talking about today, mixed gain mode, how the camera sees heat. They were unaware that things that didn't have color, such as grayscale convection currents, are hot and can be a threat. They were unaware of the importance of wiping the lens. They thought thermal imaging cameras still whited out through the heat. They were unaware of thermal pattern recognition, looking for non-uniform patterns indicating big thermal signatures inside a building. They were also unaware of when their camera displays color, and they're unaware of heat transfer and flow path identification, And the majority of them were completely unaware of how to use the camera and size up, never even considered it. And one of the biggest things we continue to find is they were unaware of accurate, up-to-date scientific information about fire attack and the importance of cooling the environment. All of this, you can find more in our free webinar on Thermal Imaging 101 provided by Seek Thermal right there at the bottom. You can reference what these cameras can and can't do and how you can use them to become more intelligently aggressive and help your fire department. This will be approximately webinar 20 of 20 hours of free content you can view on our website and in partnership with Seek Thermal. So all that stuff's reviewable for you. Let me hit the right button here. My apologies. So we have something in our line of work. We like to say, let's simplify this. Let's make things that are complicated experientially relevant. That doesn't mean dumb it down, but I have a simple rule called the rule of twos. There are two types of thermography. There are two types of thermal imaging cameras in the fire service, and there are two modes of operations. There are quantitative and qualitative thermography. Qualitative is what we do. It's estimated values, apparent temperatures. It doesn't see exacts. We're using it for basically recognition of the environment, recognition of layout. We're not looking for exact measurements because a single candle flame is 1800 to 2400 degrees. Most cameras' dynamic range is anywhere from 1000 degrees to 2000 degrees, and they don't measure it accurately. So we use qualitative devices to see the environment. And there's two types of those devices to see the environment, which are situational awareness cameras and decision-making cameras. Situational awareness cameras, which we spoke about before, are designed to prevent firefighter disorientation, regain orientation, and help firefighters in the reduced staffing environment, those that split up or those that may be operating independently. Decision-making cameras are larger, more durable, and they typically have higher resolution and faster refresh rate. Seek Thermal is the only manufacturer that makes a situational awareness camera and a decision-making camera that have the exact same specifications as far as performance inside of the core. The situational awareness camera made by Seek Thermal FirePro 300 gives you everything the VRS does, but it doesn't have the same insulated properties. So you can get the same performance, same image clarity. No other manufacturer does that. When we talk about two modes of operations, cameras see the entire dynamic range or span that it measures in typically one of three ways. They typically see it in a single gain, a dual gain, or tri-gain. Most of your cameras are dual gain, high and low sensitivity. Those are called temperature modes. They are automatic. Seek Thermal made the first innovation of the fire service in thermal imaging for quite some time called mixed gain, making the pixels operate independently. And there's two types, or there's other types the camera can operate in, or other ways it can operate called application modes. Application modes are, you have to select that option. So temperature modes are automatic. You turn it on, go to work. Application modes, you choose to press a button such as the Seek Thermal Attack Pro VRS or FirePro 300 and choose survey mode, which is a specific color palette and temperature range for lower temperature environments. And when we talk about those two types of cameras, you have situational awareness cameras on the market today. If you need a refresher on what those are and the benefits of them, we have a free webinar in the center of this slide here. These are current models with the exception of one that's not currently pictured on the left. But the ones on the left are 9 hertz or slower. We do not recommend 9 hertz refresh rate because firefighters cannot use them in an environment where they need to move their head fast. They need to be able to keep up with their scans. 9 hertz are due to something called export arms restrictions, or ITAR, International Trade's arms restriction law. So those devices can be shipped around the world if they stay at 9 hertz or slower. Firefighters need up to 30 hertz or faster models. NFPA requires 25 hertz if it's an NFPA certified camera, because your eye typically refreshes or sees at 27 hertz. So a 25 hertz camera or faster will keep up with you as you move through the environment. And more importantly, if you are in a threatening, life-threatening environment, you need to scan really quickly and find your way out. You don't want a device that lags or prevents you from seeing. Seek is the only one that has a 25 hertz thermal imaging camera in the situational awareness category that is 320 by 240 resolution, which is the same amount of pixels that decision-making cameras have. So if you want a refresher on that, please check out that QR code. And we also have on our website a resource on situational awareness cameras where you can review the specs for yourself. These are current models made by Seek: the FirePro 200, a personal safety camera, a 300, which is the ultimate situational awareness camera, Attack Pro VRS, and Attack Pro Plus. There are 4 individual webinars there to refresh you on the differences in those. The Attack Pro Plus is the NFPA certified model. my one weapon of choice is the attack code VRS, because that one gives me the option of basically TI basic and survey mode. And for my company's purposes, we record. So VRS stands for video recorded survey. That's the most versatile one that I use. Here's what we came up with for this reason why you're hearing this called Thermal Imaging Tips for Success. These are the 10 rules we want you to embrace. 10 things or concepts or guidelines, if you will, that will help you when you go through trying to train and educate your firefighters or educate yourself. And as you can see, number one is the most important. Do not over-rely on technology. Well, we have a problem because the world currently over-relies on technology. So let's talk about our over-reliance when it comes to the fire ground and what we can do about that. First of all, over-reliance on thermal imaging has been documented as a contributing factor to disorientation. Yes, I'm a thermal imaging guy, and I'm going to talk about bad things that happen with thermal imaging cameras because I believe in telling people both sides of the story. Never just tell people on your side, tell them the truth. Contributing factor to missing victims, locating firefighters in a Mayday situation. I experienced that myself. It's been a contributing factor to line of duty deaths, hence why NFPA 1801, the 2021 standard, removed the spot temperature, which is that little number in the bottom right-hand corner, because it was listed as a contributing factor in the line of duty deaths. It's also been a contributing factor to that dreaded word called rekindles. That's right. They scanned the environment. They quoted things like, "Chief, we're good. The fire room's 74 degrees. You hear that, you should be concerned. Because just like you look down this hallway and the Fire Pro 300, that's clearly not 97 degrees down that hallway. But where that spot is focused, that reticle, and the measurement it's capturing is in that approximate range based on the camera's calibration and what it's seeing. But above that, we're seeing red, which is at least 300 degrees apparent temperatures. You want to learn more about the danger of the spot temperature and why they removed it and why these are not thermometers. We have an article at the bottom of this slide that you can reference. It is our most read article on our website, which will help you understand why we should use these correctly and not as a crutch. So yes, I'm telling you, it's not a crutch. We're not going to stare at it. We're scanning. We're not filming. That's what we need to learn. The other side of it is improper use and lack of thermal imaging use has contributed to line of duty deaths. It's also been a contributing factor to failing to identify rapid fire development, such as in this video. If you look at this, you will see firefighters operating in an extremely hot environment, but firefighters fail to recognize grayscale convection currents as hot. When you fail to recognize fast-moving, high-velocity convection currents, like he taught read smoke volume, velocity, density, color, you're about to see color. Boom! It actually slapped the back of that firefighter's neck. That's how forceful that was when it came out of that flashover container. So if we're just waiting on color, we're in trouble because the absence of color is not the absence of heat, as you'll see here. Understand what you're looking at, and you need to know more about it so that you're not surprised and have a contributing factor that leads to line of duty deaths or near misses. Let's go to our second rule. We need to carry the tick. Sounds simplistic, but every time we survey the audience and we say, how many of you carry the tick every time you get off the fire truck? Do you know a room of 20 to 30 people, only 2 to 3 hands go up? Keep in mind, the people who are coming to our class are not forced to be there. They willfully chose to be there. They are the go-getters of their department. So if only 1 to 3 of them are carrying it all the time, they're the go-getters. What about the rest of them? We have a problem. And if you read that survey I quoted at the beginning, as of 2020, 5 years ago, it was shown that firefighters were leaving the thermal imaging camera on the fire truck, the fire apparatus, 50% of the time. And if you look at line of duty deaths, it showed the tick remained on the fire truck 38% of the time. And there's a video here with instructor Joey Baxa showing you how we recommend to carry it. There's many ways. We're not going to say the way. We're going to give you several ways that could help you. We want you to look at those ways and try them out for yourself and just find a way that allows you to carry it and that you don't forget it. Many firefighters have just simply mentioned, I keep forgetting. Well, where's it mounted? Is it in the right place? Is it easy to grab? Do you have a habit? It has to be a habit, and it has to be something simple and easy for you to remember. And you have to have it where you can access it or you won't, not in a hurry. So that's a big deal, is getting people to carry it, because we hear actually on the wonderful world of YouTube, I listen to this all the time. I hear this: we're having trouble finding the fire. Send in the tick. It's supposed to sprout legs and walk into the fire. Who's responsible for carrying it? Well, it's called a decision-making camera. Hence, the company officer should be carrying it. Here's some ways to carry and not carry it. Number one, retractable straps is the most common. However, I would prefer you look at the modifications of those. The only one that I recommend is gear keeping, because theirs are actually a higher quality, but I would change out the actual carabiners with twist locks. Many of the cheaper retractable straps cause issues, such as what you see here. If you want to break or lose the camera, carry it this way, clip it to the back of your SCBA. We have helped, I don't even know now, we're in the thousands of departments now that we've helped. And this is the number one way that you are going to break or lose it. That retractable strap will snap at about 60 pounds tensile strength. You're not going to reach back when you snag something. And if you want to break the lens, leave it back there. Do you know right now, germanium has tripled in price. So you want to send that back, and it was $300 to repair it. Now it's over $1,000 every time you break the lens. Firefighters break lenses all the time and complain. These things, they break too easy. I'm like, well, how are you carrying it? Well, I'm swinging it around like a pendulum on the back of my SCBA, like it doesn't matter. It is an electronic device with a window in the front that's made of germanium that will shatter. So I recommend you keep it in a way you can grab it and it doesn't flail around. So don't attach it here unless you want to reach back and realize it's not there. And don't allow it to swing frequently. Just our recommendations. We don't have statistical data. We go a lot of places, and everywhere we see it carried like this, they send back a lot of cameras to get fixed every year. Here's another rule that we should consider. We have to turn the camera on the way to the call, not at the front door. This is from a good friend of mine who shared with me. He's a well-known instructor, and I appreciate this. He said, hey, man, I made a mistake, but I'm going to post it on my channel because I want people to know that instructors make mistakes. He turned his camera on at the front door, and I put it on social media. Of course, social media being social media, like, you need a camera to find the fire, you got bigger problems. People need to understand that we're using the camera not just to find the fire. We're looking at the severity, direction, life, fire, layout. It's not just finding the fire, people. But when you show up at the front door and your camera takes 17 and a half seconds for the logo to go away, you're going to be frustrated when that man's masking up with gloves on and ready to go in 10, and your camera's still going through a flat field correction process. After 17 and a half seconds, it needs another 12 and a half seconds to finish the complete process of where it's checking or calibrating itself. You may have heard this when you turned it on before. You see the screen freezing and you've heard it clicking. It is calibrating itself. It needs a full 30 seconds total from cold start to be ready to go. So turn it on in the truck, make sure the battery's good. And if you're equipped with something like an Attack Pro VRS or Fire Pro 300, you could go ahead and set it in survey mode, which allows you to see the problem early for size-up purposes. So you're set up for success before you step off the truck. 4, we need to provide thermal imaging training. Ladies and gentlemen, I am just one company trying to help people, and we train over 10,000 people a year. I don't even know if those numbers are accurate anymore because we've increased. And I can tell you that we're not even scratching the surface globally. This is one of the most neglected areas in the fire service. It's not prioritized, it's not focused on, and at the end of every fiscal year, I get phone calls because they're running out of time to spend their money. And they want me to tell them what camera to buy, and I won't do it. I'll give them a lesson plan because they're just going to buy something and stick it on the truck, and the problem's going to perpetuate itself. You don't put PPE on firefighters and not train them on it. You don't put an air pack on them. You don't hand them a halogen and don't teach them how to use it. But this is the last and least focused area, and there are 3 standards that focus on training and understanding that say you have to train on. NFPA 1001 is your standard for firefighter professional qualifications, which has changed to NFPA 1010. Chapter 7 says you shall provide training for new hires, like recruits. They shall have general knowledge, operational knowledge, maintenance knowledge, and be able to do 3 things with that device, 2 of which requires live fire training, not target solutions. Okay. 1408 is the operations personnel training standard and covers maintenance, operation, and care, which is a huge one because we don't do that right. Hence why we have battery problems. That has changed to 1400. You can look at chapter 7. It talks about the training aspect. Can you get 23 topics done in one day? Because that's what it says you had to do in 1408. We're reviewing 1400 now to look at the changes. But you need to understand that it's a lot of information, and it requires you to have policies and procedures on how to use them, how to train with them. If you want examples of policies and procedures, there's a QR code that takes you to that folder So you can look at other departments that have created successful ones. And then NFPA 1801, which is the standard on thermal imaging for the fire or imagers for the fire service, one of the most intensive standards ever written, is now changing to NFPA 1930, which is a consolidation of about 4 different standards. It still has 1801 in it, but it talks about the knowledge you shall have to be an instructor and the concepts or terms that you hear, like high and low sensitivity and resolution, and all those things. What does that mean? And how is that camera tested? Is it durable? Is it going to interfere with it if I take it near radios? All of those things are answered in that standard. And you need to understand that these 3 standards together don't even compare to level 1 of an industrial professional. Someone who inspects houses for a living or looks at breaker boxes have to have a minimum of 32 hours of training. And they typically don't get killed in their occupation. You do. And we don't focus on training. And if you want more information on 1801, how that applies to you, there's a webinar here in the bottom center that you can watch. All this is for free. We're not holding this information back from you. It takes work. You've got to pound the pages as much as you pound the pavement and getting out there and do your training. Okay. As I mentioned, the 1001 standard changed to 1010, which requires firefighters to have requisite knowledge. What does that mean? They need to be able to operate it and the limitations of it, which is huge, and requisite skills to demonstrate the use of that camera and accurately interpret TI data. Oh my, someone's going to accurately interpret a qualitative device? That's going to be impressive. To locate victims, fire, hotspots, and liquid level in a container. That last one's a little subjective. Can't always identify liquid level in every container. But these objectives require live fire training. Just like in this one, you can clearly see through a Fire Pro 300 where the fire is. You can see the hose line, the victim in the floor, and you can see where the fire is going. We can make out orientation points. We can do a lot of things in a simple orientation drill so they can learn how to interpret or accurately interpret, as they say here. I don't think anybody can accurately interpret it, but they can have an idea of what they're looking at, because this is an estimated value. It's not an actual picture of how hot it is, because it doesn't read gases. It gives you an idea, but keep in mind, it's a lot hotter than you think it is, okay? And if you don't have any resources within your department, we have made it possible through partnerships with Seek Thermal and the work we've done. You can go on our YouTube channel and watch hundreds of hours of webinars, and we have links here where you can go step by step to learn the basics. This does not replace live fire training. It is a guideline to help you do so. But many fire departments are not aware of the proper resources and do not provide thermal imaging training. They're unaware. We're helping you become aware. We're not preaching at you. We're trying to help. Because, as my dad said 20 years ago, son, you didn't know any better either. So our job is to help enlighten, inform, and educate. As we educate ourselves, we should educate each other. So we have short educational videos and articles to help you. And we have all these wonderful webinars that Seek Thermal has helped us with. So let's talk about understanding that part of the rule of twos where it says temperature modes and application modes. How does your camera see heat? Well, if you look at every fire service camera, they operate in one of 4 ways. They either have a single gain or specialty application mode, which means you are outside of the words TI basic. TI basic is what every fire service camera shall start in. If it's in a plus symbol in the lower left-hand corner, you will see that. That means you have went outside of TI basic, and there's an additional feature that camera offers. You can find things like survey mode in the Seek camera, search and rescue mode in the FLIR, thermal scan in the Draeger, overhaul mode in Argus. One of my favorites in other models, electronic thermal throttle and Bullard. All of those are good to use for investigative purposes, but you got to be trained on them, which it says you should. The majority of cameras out there, if they start up in TI basic, operate in what's called a dual gain temperature span or temperature mode. They see the entire dynamic range, 0 to whatever degrees, let's just say 0 to 1200 degrees, in 2 operating spans, 0 to 300, 300 to 1200, depending on the manufacturer and how it's programmed. Some are lower, some are higher. But all of those models, when they see high heat at a certain percentage, there's a brief pause and a green triangle inside of a box shows up in the upper left-hand corner that indicates to you that camera has shifted gains to low sensitivity, which means low sensitivity to detail and high heat. Those of you who are operating or using cameras that are older than 2013, That's not good, number one. Number two, they will not have a green triangle in them. They will have things like an MSA 5000, 5200, 5600, or 5800 will have a blue L in the lower left-hand corner, and the temperature bar will change blue. If it's older than that and many different models, instead of a green triangle, it'll say EI somewhere on the screen. They're not in the same spot because there was no standard prior to 2013. That stands for electronic integration. And one camera actually just said hot across the top of the screen. I thought that was pretty smart. Then you have cameras that split the entire dynamic range into 3 spans. It's like having first, second, third gear. You have the Scott X380, which was formerly known as the ISG. You have the Leader camera and Argus that currently operate that way. They split a big span, like 2000 degrees, into 3 spans. And you got to know when it shifts and what it's doing and why. I'm not a big fan of that. Mixed gain is the easiest and most firefighter friendly. Seek Thermal is proprietary to them, but basically each pixel switches between high and low sensitivity or high and low gain on its own. You don't have to wait on it trying, and it balances out the image between hot and cold. So you see the area cold where the victim might be found and the hot area where the fire is simultaneously without a super loss of detail. It helps you do your job faster, smarter, and safer. And if you want a brief overview of some of the ones I just mentioned, Seek does it pixel by pixel. That's a review of mixed gain mode on the left. FLIR takes 2% of the pixels before it shifts to low gain with a green triangle engages if it's in TI basic. That's a review of it right there in the middle. Bullard takes 3% of their new model, 307,200 pixels, which is a 640 by 480 camera. And that's a review of it right here. And then MSA, which is no longer in production as of June last year, as far as the 6000 model, took almost 1/3 of the field of view, 32% of 76,800 pixels at pushing around 280, 290 degrees. Then it would shift and go to low sensitivity, and then you wouldn't see color again to over 1,047 degrees. So there's your overview of those 4. I'm giving you a ton of resources in a short amount of time for one reason. I want you to go back and watch and go through these that apply to you. We Seek Thermal sponsoring this, but you may not have a Seek camera. You may have a FLIR camera or Bullard camera, whatever you may have. When I was in the fire department, I didn't have a choice. What was on the trucks, what I used. Get yourself an education. Instead of playing TikTok, let's look at this and see what we can learn that may help us, okay? Let's talk about high and low sensitivity or dual temperature modes in current cameras and see the difference. This is a Bullard QXT or NXT, their previous model before the QXT Pro. The picture on the left is one of my instructors, Thomas Anderson, looking at the fire room with the door closed and high sensitivity. Very impressive picture. When he opens the door, what happens to Thomas in the picture on the right? These are turned sideways, one so we can see the floor and ceiling in one view. That's something we teach called the gangster grip, which actually was written about and developed by Carrollton Fire and Rescue in the late 90s. We didn't come up with it. We just coined the phrase gangster grip. But when it goes to low sensitivity in the older model, you can see Thomas darkens down, but the fire gets more clear and intensifies as far as in the image. That's what low sensitivity means. It focuses in on the higher heat, and you have low sensitivity to details such as the cooler regions. All cameras will have a trade-off. None of them are perfect. Some of them perform better in low heat, some of them perform better in high heat, some of them perform better in the middle. You won't know that until you test them in a fire. You want to see how a FLIR camera performs high to low sensitivity? Watch as we simply move my hand over the burner in our home right before we're cooking. When the camera pauses, the green triangle engages, and we clearly see the burners on the grill. But what happened to my hand? Those of you who are using artificial smoke and heated mannequins and trained firefighters to locate victims should be very concerned just based on looking at this image. I had a firefighter approach me after a training and said, I just learned that I was scanning all wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, all of my scans were done in artificial smoke with no heat. And I just learned I can't scan that fast in a high heat environment because my camera will pause. I said, yeah, you got a good camera, but if you don't anticipate that, you'll miss it. You're right. And also, if you have this amount of heat with that much cold in the background, the colder area is very hard to see. So just don't think you're going to see the victim every time, because depending on circumstances, the body, the background temperature, and the camera itself, it changes how that person presents. When we talk about the Seek cameras using mixed gain mode, we don't have to worry about a triangle. We don't have to worry about variable color palettes and when it engages color and high sensitivity or low sensitivity. We just look at the environment, as you see in the bottom picture when it's compared to the camera above it, and we see that it's colorizing that burn barrel earlier than this other model. because it's doing it pixel by pixel, not based on a percentage. Every other camera on the market colorizes based on a percentage of pixels at a certain point, and then it switches or shows colorization depending on its program. Where Seek does it pixel by pixel. Each pixel, if it reaches a certain point, will show the pre-programmed colorization temperature correlation. A fancy way of saying, if that pixel is 302 degrees, it's going to be yellow, 302 to 574. If it's over 575 to 849, it's going to be orange as far as energy is concerned. And if it's above 850, it's going to be red. But if the pixels on the floor are cold, they're going to show up cold because it balances out the image, allowing you to see hot and cold areas simultaneously without a loss of too much detail, so you can make easier decisions without delay. Simple, easy, and this is how much faster it is. The Seek is 25 hertz on the right. This is a 60 hertz camera on the left. We're going to scan, my friend here is going to scan looking at a wall, and then he's going to have the fire show up in front of him. Watch what happens. The Seek instantly responded. Watch the camera on the left. We're going to back it up. Watch as I press play. Camera on the left pauses and then catches up. That's what cameras do when they shift. Many are faster, some are slower. But just because it says 60 hertz doesn't mean anything until you put it in the fire. You got to know your camera. Mixed gain mode does it pixel by pixel. Each pixel is switching at 25 hertz instead of 2% of them requiring to be at a certain percentage for 1 second and then a pause and then a shift. You may think that's not a big deal until you're in an environment that 1 second or 2 seconds makes a huge difference in your decision making. So let's talk about scanning. In the years of doing this, I've come to the epiphany that if we don't teach firefighters the basics well, we're just impressing them with our useless knowledge and theoretical and definitions and how we can explain things. But if they can't do the basics, it doesn't matter. And the basics in thermal imaging are pretty simple. One of them is, once we learn how to carry it correctly, is how we should scan. I was taught to scan high to low. The problem with that is the majority of the cameras, if you point it up high first, they're going to switch to low sensitivity or low gain, and you're going to lose visibility where you're trying to find people or the layout. So the most important thing you're looking for is life. And they're found 4 feet and down. Per firefighter rescue survey, 12% of them are found within an egress point, and almost 45% of them are found in a bedroom. And if you connect the dots between, you find all of them. And if I do my scan low to high, starting looking straight ahead in the lower environment, my camera will see those areas. They potentially see victims or those pathways where they're at. That's why they don't see victims with ticks. They see where they're located, like, hey, there's a bedroom, and I go to the bedroom and I find the victim. The tick didn't get the credit, but it got you to the bedroom. But the tick scan should begin low, and if possible, look away from the fire, because we get tunnel vision. We see fire, we look straight at it. And we don't look to our right and there's a victim right next to us, or a set of stairs leading to a basement. If you're scanning and your camera freezes, you need to freeze. Avoid a painter scan. I see people doing this. They raise their camera up and down like they're painting a wall. Do not do that. It confuses the camera. It can't keep up. And I don't care if it's even mixed gain mode, you will see a pause because you're constantly going cold, hot, hot, cold, back, forth. And the camera can't keep up, neither can you. So if you scan from wall to wall, Wand to Wand, as they say in Germany, I want to see 180 degrees. Why? Because I see people stick the camera in straight ahead or standing outside the door trying to scan, which is a huge failure. We teach the 4 points of scanning in Insight Fire Training. You have to get low, break the plane of the environment with the camera, sweep and call out with your body first, then pick up the camera, wipe the lens, and scan wall to wall, slow and steady. And that's what wins the race. Those few seconds that people say are being wasteful speed up their overall location of the fire and search efforts by as much as 70%. We have seen people who can't search well, give them a basic search class, and then get them searching well, and then add the camera to it. And they took their search times in a 1,200 square foot Connex box from 9 minutes down to 6 minutes. And then you think about people who are already dialed in, and then I teach them to be able to locate things faster. They can do this even better. And if you're scanning and you need to see more of the floor or more of the ceiling, If you're holding a pistol grip camera, you can rotate it up or down like a motorcycle throttle. This video right here is another video of Joey Baxa explaining it. All of this is on our YouTube channel. It's free. Check it out. Please use it. When we talk about scanning sequence, this is the basics that I just mentioned. You got to get low. You got to read the smoke with your eyes. We say training before technology. Sweep inside the doorway. Call out fire department. That's a very basic thing. They may hear you. You may hear them. And your first scan, ladies and gentlemen, is your best scan. Before you shove your face and that tick into that smoke and you have that moisture change temperature change where your face piece fogs up and the lens fogs up, get low and take advantage of that. And then wipe that lens with your non-dominant hand. I used to wipe the lens with my right hand. That's a bad idea because my right hand's always down on the ground, searching, dragging, getting in the dirt. So I'm just smearing whatever I did on my face piece and on my lens. And scan wall to wall, flipping the camera sideways or gangster grip, and finish scanning back across the ceiling towards the point you're at to make sure you check directly above you, slightly behind you. So instead of a 6-sided scan, you're doing 2 moves, wall to wall with a slight finish over your head. And every time you get to an environment, another room, another entry point, you pick up the camera and scan. You do not, as we'll say in this next slide, you do not move with the camera in front of your face. That's why my search friends hate cameras, because firefighters scoot 3 feet, pick up the camera, scoot 3 feet, pick up the camera, or worse yet, they walk or crawl with the camera in front of their face the whole time. You're asking for a problem if you do that. You are. You will get disoriented. The camera's lights will go out and you will not know where you're at. Plus you're basically have huge depth perception issues, tunnel vision issues. The field of view is much more narrow than what your eyes see, even with a mask on. Don't do that. Okay. You want to scan, communicate, and put it down. Plus, if you're over 40, ladies and gentlemen, I got bad news. It takes a long time for your eyes to adjust from day vision to night vision and back and forth. So if I'm constantly staring at a bright light and when I go into the dark, my eyes don't adjust well. Quick 3 to 8 second scans can make a huge difference for information, and then put it down and then move. So one of the things we also talk about is when you have that information, how do you communicate? We develop a simple model. We don't want a bunch of talking. Just like you hear somebody who's giving a size up and they won't stop talking, you're like, it says PTT, push to talk, not push to think. You know, the kid, I'm like, I got a 3-story house with vinyl siding and green shutters and pretty flowers in front. They don't care. My wife says it best, land the plane, honey. When you're about to go into a fire environment where seconds matter, I scan and I say, bedroom, crib right, or classroom, go left. If I get to scan before they go in, because if you're dialed in companies, you may get the first scan, they may take off and start split searching without you, which is fine as long as you could catch up and give them some information. We're not advocating that you have to give them all the information. There's no way possible. So give them a short directive, type of room, direction of search. And then you, as a company officer, need to be aware of thermal conditions, evac or ventilation points, closing doors. Don't sit there at the door with fire coming over your head. We see that too. Control the flow path, locate the fire, isolate it. All of that can be done quickly with little bits of communication, if any, that you and your dialed in crew can work out long before you get in the fire. You can practice these drills inside the firehouse on how you move and how you communicate. And this is why we tell people you got to practice this, because if you scan too fast, especially if you don't understand how your camera shifts, this is what will happen. Camera pauses, triangle engages, watch. And the firefighter keeps scanning. This is not a seat camera, but you can see how he missed the firing. I'll back it up. Pauses, triangle engages. You see that white cranium effect. Many firefighters think that's whiteout. This camera right here has something called FSX, which is flexible scene enhancement. It is just about to shift and add color to that white grainy nonsense stuff you see, but he didn't stay there long enough. He's not patient, nor should he be if it's hot, right? They want us to slow down and, it's 1,000 degrees raining down on your head. You may not want to sit there and be still. So it's a good idea to get that information before you get close to the target and understand when your camera shifts, how long it takes, because if it takes too long, you may not even use it to begin with, right? Whereas if we scan with an attack pro and the gangster grip here from our boys in Georgia, this is Bears of the Oath, you can clearly see the fire to our right. You can see the direction of the convection currents. That thermal layer, by the way, is not the yellow part, it's the white line under it. You can see the ventilation points that could cause us problems. If you look right here on your left, There's a window right here. That window fails, it's going to get really interesting. Tennis racket, nightstand, looks like a crumpled up mess of a bed. Who knows what's on the bed? You got to go search it. The camera doesn't do the search for you, just tells you what it is. But that's how quick and easy mixed gain mode in a seat is. Okay. And if you want to see why mixed gain mode makes a huge difference for the win, we did this on purpose. We have a victim in the floor and we're standing up being a lazy firefighter. And all you see is the heat coming out of that next room. Excuse me. And everything below you is dark. When I rotate the camera sideways, watch what happens. The floor that was dark lights up because of mixed gain mode, allowing me to see now the victim, the furniture, the firefighters, and I can see floor to ceiling. And if you look really closely in that next room, there's a mannequin there. And the top half of that mannequin is colorized, which is not good because that's 300 to 500 plus degrees. Not good for human skin. Okay. But that's the difference between lazy standing up scan, where the lower half is completely missed, to rotating it and getting that information and going straight to the victim instead of going, I'll just bump into it, I'll figure it out. You crawl around in the dark if you want to. My kid's right there. I want you to go straight to my kid or straight to that bed. I don't want you to figure it out in the dark. We have enough technology and training to go find the victim or find the area of interest where the victim might be without staring at the camera too long. This is basic stuff. People think we're trying to turn them into videographers. We just want them to look both ways before they cross the street. And when they're looking, a lot of firefighters have gotten very frustrated because they've seen this image on the left. The screen is all gray and they say the camera's whited out. Years ago, it was required to have training when you got these devices. And part of it was understanding if the lens was covered with debris or moisture, you would not see. So we teach a 3-wipe methodology. Wipe the lens, wipe your face piece, wipe the display. Lens, mask, display. Used to say, wipe your face piece, wipe the tip. When I realized by the time I finish wiping my face piece, wipe the lens, come back, my face piece is fogged up again. Because you're not promised what environment you're going in. If you're standing too high, you're in a flow path, high moisture environment, searching above the fire, you may only have a second, if that, before that lens or display fogs back up. So if you watch this flashover video, you can clearly see they are clear as day until we flow some water. This is a dreaded penciling application where we show thermal rebound. The heat returns right away. Watch what happens to the image clarity in just a matter of seconds. It's going great. Well, many people would think the fire's going out. It's not. It's atmospheric attenuation. Moisture is building up in the lens, giving you a false image. He wipes the lens. Look at that. Huge difference. It's like driving in a rainstorm and suddenly you turn on your windshield wipers and everything gets clear. So make sure you teach these basic behaviors, right? These are basic. And this is why you need to wipe the lens. This is what a grown man in the fetal position looks like 8 feet away on a very good camera, who's in need of rescue, by the way, when they don't wipe the lens. You wonder why people don't see victims? They don't even carry the camera or use it correctly. This man was found because the firefighter called out. He did not see him on the camera. The camera sees him, doesn't see it well, because the lens is covered in soot and moisture and who knows what else. You look there, we outline them for your viewing pleasure. You know, it's not always going to look white hot like I was taught in the food school with the mannequin with the heated electric blanket wrapped around it, or baked potatoes in the burn building, right? Well, what happens when I go into fire and the lens won't clear? It's constantly fogging up. And that guy from North Carolina told me if I wipe the lens, I'd be able to see. Well, let's look at a contraindication. Look at this door. What's blowing out this door? We're supposed to be attacking the fire. Do you think we're flowing enough water here? Probably not. Should we be standing up? Probably not. Watch what happens when I follow them. I go in and turn right and go down 5 steps. It's like a split level. Look what happens to my image clarity. I'm in the flow path. I'm into full exhaust. You know, a lot of us would go, that's awesome. Well, not for long. It's not. You need to get out of there. Okay, I've dropped down, get out of the flow path, wipe the lens, and boom, image clears up. Heat's going above my head, up the stairs, and turning to the stairs going to the right, which is where bedrooms are upstairs, which is not good. So that's one reason you may not be able to see. You're in a full exhaust. I reviewed 9 Maydays where firefighters went in full exhaust, didn't recognize it, and saw nothing but gray, never wiped the lens, and all of them were burned, one severely. These never made the news, never made the near miss reports. This is what happens around the US. Nobody talks about because it's not reported, or they think something else happened. Their experience tells them one thing, the truth is another. This is why convection currents and wiping the lens is important. You go down this set of stairs, the lens is going to fog up for a different reason, because you're crawling down a chimney. The fire's down the stairs to the left. A little warm, a little toasty. You don't realize it. About 4 steps down, you feel it coming up your boot leg and realize, I'm standing on a barbecue grill. That's not good. And if it lights, where's it going to go? Up your boot leg and up to you. Not good. Okay. So training to interpret this data, as it said in chapter 7 of NFPA 1010, to accurately interpret the data involves a lot of work. And you can't just do this one time and figure it out. It's like milk and eggs. I've heard it say that perishable skills. Milk and eggs, you don't eat them, they're going to go bad. You don't use this stuff, you're going to lose it. If you're not looking at this data, looking at images of what your camera looks like in hot, cold, looking at objects, looking at thermal severity, you're not gonna do it under stress. You're just not. You think you will, you won't. You'll fail the lizard brains, my friend Robin Ramirez talks about. So here's some general things. Don't use the spot temperature. That's why it was taken away in newer cameras. Understand the rule of twos, part of it, temperature modes and application modes. Understand resolution. How clear an image do you have, and how it affects your decision making. Understand the rules of victim identification, which we'll talk about. Understand what objects and hazards look like and how distance will affect all of that. If you're too far away, you're not going to see a whole lot. So let's talk about tick use and victim location identification. Number one, size up can be improved dramatically with tick use. Identify the hottest part, coldest part, layout, fire direction spread, bedrooms, all kind of cool stuff. We spent 2 days talking about tick use and size up. Initial scans provide valuable information on fire location, direction spread, and severity. Layout of structure, probably the most important thing people overlook, is where the bedrooms are, egress pathways, what kind of house is it, hoarding conditions, is it a nice, neat, Better Homes and Garden house? Do they have a motorcycle in the living room? Is there a hospital bed in the living room? If you see a big long table with 4 high chairs on it, what does that tell you? Because, little kids up there, right? And just because you don't see color or you don't understand thermal imaging, I'm going to show you this video. Before I press play, he's got his hand on this door to the fire room. And if you're a trained thermographer, you're trained to look for pattern recognition. And around the edges of the door look like little white flames, wispy patterns. Watch what happens to little white wispy patterns when he opens the door. Oops. There are some pretty impressive doors out there in America right now, and there's some cheap ones. But a door can hold back fire. Thank goodness, because we use them when we go to bed, and firefighters use them to isolate stuff. But if it can hold back fire, it can hide fire from the untrained. So just because you don't see color doesn't mean it's not hot. A small, subtle heat signature can be an indication of a big problem inside. Right? So let's talk about the rules of victim identification. We learned this the hard way in studying all these different rescues that people shared with us. We learned these 3 concepts, or these 3 variables, affect how you will see a victim, if you see a victim at all. The background temperature, is it hot or is it cold? The body temperature, is the person alive, deceased, covered up, or burned? Because all of those change how they present. They're alive, their skin's regulating temperature. They're dead, been dead a while, skin's not regulating temperature. They're passive emitters, my friend Joe DeVito talks about, and they will absorb heat and disappear or blend in. They're covered up, you may not see them at all. They're burned terribly, they're not going to present the same. I'm just going to warn you. And a thermal imaging camera, the camera itself, if it's a situational awareness camera, low hertz or 9 hertz and low resolution, you may not see farther than 7 feet. The picture is going to be cloudy, grainy. It's going to look like Minecraft, right? If you got a decision-making camera, it may look better, but is it an older or newer? What about the distance to the target? Are you in high or low sensitivity? Did you choose some fancy application mode that the manufacturers said you could use that wasn't tested in a fire? Do you know there's only one fire-rated approved color palette? It's called TI Basic. TI Basic's it. Black, gray, white, yellow, orange, red, with black and gray and white taking up no more than 50% of the temperature range. And then the manufacturer gets to tell you when color shows up. That's the only approved fire service color palette. That's it. Everything else is user specific. So when we talk about rules of tick use and search, Think about it. You're searching for fire, searching for victims, searching for both. If I'm searching for victims, as my friend Joey Baxton, instructor, says, I got to shrink the target. How do I shrink the target? Identify target areas, bedrooms, conflicts. Where do they tell me they were? What does the data say where they are? Am I searching for fire? Convection equals direction, also severity. Look at this. You can tell the fire to your right. Colorization can provide information or hide it. Some cameras, when they show a lot of color, will block out detail. That's pretty important if there's something behind that color, like a door, or it's colorized all the way to the floor, which is not good, and it covers up a person or a hole in the floor. What does your camera look like in high heat, low heat, and moderate conditions? What do convection currents look like? Can you identify rooms with it easily? Door frames, door casing, hose lines, types of flooring. You may laugh, but I was taught to feel the floor. Remember what I crawled across. What if I can identify that floor? And I know that's the way I came in. That's the way out. This is our rules of tick use and search webinar. It's free for you. You can scan it and watch it as a refresher. These are basic concepts to help you use the camera, and they do not replace a fundamental hands-on search. We do not teach people sit in the doorway and call out things. We don't teach people stay at the window and call out. We teach people to enter, scan, communicate, mitigate quickly. That's why everything we teach ends up making them faster, not slower. If you're doing something with a tick that makes you slower, well, you really need to consider what you're doing. Because my mentor, Chief Mitchum, says take seconds and win minutes. Everything we do that causes us to pause causes everything else to be faster and more efficient. Just like knowing your streets on the way to a call. You put in the work ahead of time, you know which way to turn, you know how to get there. Right? When I said distance is not your friend, it can affect image clarity and resolution and your ability to see things. The military calls it Johnson's criteria, DRI, the ability to detect, recognize, and identify. There are two victims at the end of this 24-foot space. You cannot see them until you are between 6 and 3 feet away. Never scan a space and say, oh, it's a bathroom, we don't have to search it. That's a horrible thing. You can't see through things, around things, behind things. And you darn sure can't tell what that is. And I got bad news for you. As you get older, your eyesight gets worse. So you can have the best camera on the market and be in a terrible environment, wiping your face piece and trying to see on that really good camera. And if your eyes are already strained and tired like mine are, you're not going to see it. So don't blame the camera. Everybody wants to blame the tool and the tactic, but not the person holding it. We need to do a better job of training each other and educating each other and quit pointing fingers on social media for everything. That's my biggest complaint. And one of the other things you'll have to watch out is something called washout. Thermographers call it a bland scene. When everything is the same temperature, your camera is basically blind. This can happen in high moisture content environments like a sprinkler head activated in cold smoke. It can happen when you're operating above the fire. There's no ventilation. The fire is not yet under control or just slightly just been knocked down. It can happen in long distances where everything's the same temperature. If you don't have a temperature difference, your camera may not see it. You need to know what the effective range of your camera is in cold, warm, and hot environments ahead of time. So you're not trying to figure it out on the fly when Mrs. Smith, as Chief Bernasini used to talk about, is relying on you to go get her daughter. I need to be able to find that bedroom. So I can do a fundamental hands-on search and pick the kid up. The tick doesn't pick the kid up. The tick tells you where to go and hopefully gives you information if you need it to get out. So washout is a big deal. It can happen in warehouses, cold smoke. Please be careful of that because the tick can cause you to get lost or disoriented when you do that. When we talk about additional features in rule number 8, we're going into TI Basic Plus. TI Basic Plus is, if you'll notice in any camera, if you go outside of TI Basic, like on the Fire Pro 300, you have to push that little flashlight button, has a plus symbol. You're going into 2 different application modes. There's a temperature mode and a survey mode. Temperature mode adds the spot temperature back, which I'm not a big fan of. The firefighters complain, so the manufacturers put them back for some reason. In my opinion, that number in the bottom right-hand corner should have never been there. But when you have modes like survey mode, we call those investigative color palettes. They are very useful, as my friend Mike Chapman used to say, early or late in the environment. Early for size up, late for overhaul, early in fire development, where I have low heat, all these smells and bells you run. Great to find the problem early. The survey mode colorizes earlier than any other application mode and camera on the market, with the exception of probably thermal throttle by bullet. So those 2 allow you to see it earlier. And if you look at this, it's showing colorization pixel by pixel at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius from my friends overseas. See, I plugged in a Celsius thing for my buddies. You want to see that early when you're doing size up. You want to see that early when you're remote from the fire. You want to see that early when Mrs. Smith tells you she smells something burning in her house and she can't find it, neither can you. And you go back and lay down and go, man, I hope I found it. And 3 hours later, you go back to the house and it's on fire. NFPA 1801, which is now changed to 1930, says all participants shall use and be able to interpret the colors displayed and the temperatures or ranges associated with them. Ranges is a better way instead of saying temperatures, because people get hung up in exact numbers. Can I look at a hazmat container and tell exactly how hot it is before it's going to explode? No. Why? Because the container's lying to you. Container may be made of a reflective surface. You can get a measurement of something that the camera's giving you, but it's within its parameters. And if you trust an exact measurement, I got some calibration gas I can sell you for your 4-gas meter. Now, calibration gas is not the same as the other stuff it's measuring. Make sure you understand this is an apparent temperature. You're looking at apparent temperatures, it's estimated values. We're looking for patterns that indicate problems, or looking for people. The two main things you'll see in any fire service cameras, TI Basic and TI Basic Plus. These are direct quotes from the new NFPA 1930 standard, which is 1801 summarized. You can read them if you want, but what I want you to get out of this is TI Basic is what your camera has to start in. That's that Attack Pro on the right. Black, gray, white, yellow, orange, red. TI Basic Plus, we had to press that right button, or Seek's new upgrade, you can press the power button and flashlight button together, click them, and click right through it without having to press and hold for 3 seconds. And you can go to survey mode. Survey mode will have that plus symbol and a blue S, and the background will be blue, telling you you are in a different application mode, and it colorizes early. If you are in any other application mode outside of TI Basic, NFPA requires them to have the ability to tap the green button one time for no more than 1 second, and it will default back to firefighting mode. Hence why we tell firefighters en route to the call, set it for your investigative color palette, such as survey mode. You get to the front door and it's too hot for survey mode, I just tap the green button. I don't toggle, I don't go through a bunch of button pressing, just tap it and you're back to business. And if you want to learn more about color palettes, we have a great article we did in International Fire Safety Journal a couple years ago called The Critical Role of Thermal Imaging Color Palettes, that breaks it down. That QR code will take it to you on the right-hand side. Here's an example of TI Basic in the Attack Pro. It's the same in the Fire Pro 300, just their field of view is flipped. So you're seeing 0 to 301 degrees apparent temperatures in grayscale, and the color kicks in yellow, orange, and red based on the numbers you see here. Notice one of them says 1022 and one says 1200. Your Attack Pro and Attack Pro Plus are 1022 range, and your VRS goes up to 1200. To me, it's all estimated values. I don't get caught up in the exact numbers because they're not exact. But notice how mixed gain mode balances out that cooler area while still showing the heat above, and you see the firefighter. You can see what they're doing and tell them what kind of air pack they're wearing, where they are. So TI Basic, and this is what it would look like in the Attack Pro. If you want to talk about survey mode, here is 2 pictures of the same environment. One is in TI Basic in the Fire Pro 300 on the left, survey mode on the right. This gets people's attention. Most manufacturers do not recommend you use these investigative modes in firefighting because they'll saturate what we used to call whiteout. It'll go all red. However, if you're far enough away and it gets your attention, it's like here, maybe they'll open the nozzle. Mongo see red. Mongo paint it blue. As Kyle Romulus says, see red, send blue. We can use this for size up, entry, fire attack, search, overhaul, false alarms, investigative calls, down power lines, lost person searches, and more. You want to see survey mode examples? This QR code takes you to lots of those on our YouTube channel so you can see the difference for yourself. Just please don't use the spot temperature, and use the right color palette at the right time. In my opinion, I like Michael Whitty's statement that fire service cameras should have 2 modes, application modes, fire and investigative. That's what I've lived by for years, because I don't think you need to have 10 options, 5 options, or as one manufacturer offers over 20 color palettes, over 20 under stress. I don't think so. Here's the video showing you the difference. That grayscale convection currents coming out of there are hot. That's Ohio Fire Academy. It's a pretty impressive burn building. We're about to take some recruits in. Now, without critiquing too much, watch when we go from TI Basic to survey mode. Boom. Which one gets your attention here? This or that? Remember to the eye doctor, and he goes, better, worse, better, worse, better, worse. What gets their attention? What makes them take action? I will tell you, survey mode, in my opinion, not my favorite for search. It's my favorite for keep. TI basic is my favorite for search and for looking for convection currents and fire attack and high heats and everything. Just a general rule of thumb, you roll up and flames are rolling out the window, you probably don't need survey mode. Just go ahead and go to TI basic. And then we come to knowing the limitations. I mentioned one of these at the beginning, but I like to reiterate it. Don't use this as a thermometer. I showed this picture again. It's worth repeating. It's not made at 97 degrees down the hallway. I have seen many firefighters even publishing textbooks that the environment got cooler because they were basing on the temperature in the bottom right-hand corner. They didn't even look up to realize the second picture showed a higher heat thermal environment. Your camera reads surface measurements, not gases. Look up optical gas imaging if you want to learn how to read gases. X-ray vision, not with this, doesn't look that way. It measures those surface temperatures based on a preset emissivity, which is whether the object emits, absorbs, or reflects numerically between 0 and 1, and your camera's programmed at 0.95. How many 0.95 emissivity values are in a house? Some, but those are closer to a rough or a black body, a perfectly matted type rough surface. If it's a shiny surface, it's closer to 0. How many shiny objects are in the house, which will turn the camera off. They also stick out like a sore thumb for identification, such as windows, panic bars, things like that to get you out. So that leads to grossly inaccurate temperature readings. And then also we got to watch out for if the camera hasn't been installed or put together properly. If you key the radio up, it could lock the screen up if they didn't put the EMI coatings in properly. Manufacturers don't like it when I say this, but I keep seeing people who install these make mistakes on all the major manufacturers. It's a fact. We're human and we'll make a mistake. Just talk to the manufacturer, they'll get it swapped out for you. It should not lock the screen up when you key the radio. But the biggest limitation, ladies and gentlemen, is the person holding. We have to educate ourselves on the tool. Okay? This is an example of what a camera looks like when the code is not put in correctly. This is not the camera's fault. This is the person who installed it properly. Keyed up the radio, it locked the screen up. I've seen this happen on every single manufacturer, not just one. Because the same flawed human beings work at every place in the world. We're all flawed. We make mistakes. Other issues are lack of maintenance, not cleaning them properly. I've seen people scrub their lenses with a wire brush. Don't do that. Reflections are a big problem. Talk about RFI, radio frequency interference. And my personal biggest issue with TIC use is using the thermal imaging camera as a forceful entry key. You're going to pick up a $3,000 to $7,000 device and break out a window with it and wonder why it don't work. Wouldn't do that. You wouldn't take your iPhone and smash a window out because you paid for it. You won't pay for that one. You just don't know how. Okay. And our last point is looking at the incident tactically and how does it help us do those tactical objectives, from size up to identify and manage the flow path to go, no go decision making, which doesn't mean don't go. It just means I see this, I need to fix it. Enhancing our fire attack and search efforts doesn't replace them, helping us with rapid intervention in huge ways and more. We have a great webinar from Chief John Lightly and I we did with Seek some time ago on fire attack and size up. I highly encourage you to watch it. He goes through 3 case studies of incidents he's had in his career and shares his lessons learned in it. He's very humble about it. Please watch it and learn from him. He goes through a lot of fire and is very kind enough to share that information. This is one of those fires and why this is important, why we teach to scan low to high. I'd ask people, is your first thought when you get off the truck here to grab the tick? They're like, no. Let me show you why it should be. He turns and starts to scan low. And what does he see? Basement window, single pane glass with high heat coming through. Whether it's burning through the floor or we have fire in the basement, all we know is there's heat down there. If we knock down that body of fire in the front and make entry through the front, we can easily end up in the basement. Take the time to do your size up. Gather that information and adjust accordingly. John Norman says, let circumstances dictate procedure. Shouldn't be the other way around. The policy says this, well, the fire doesn't care what your policy is. It's trying to kill you. You need to understand that. And your job is to win. My goal is to get you home. I want you in there and I want you out of there as quickly as possible so you can win and help people. You go back home to your family. This is a big deal. Take the time to make time. This is a picture of that basement window. This is a definition of what's called a thermal bridge or a heat bridge, an area of weakness in the structure that allows energy to go through. Single pane glass is not put in new homes anymore. And there are tons of old buildings across the US and around the world that still have single pane windows in them. This is just one area that you could see it. We spend 2 days talking about thermal bridges, non-repeating, repeating, and geometric thermal bridges. Those are the types that you can study in thermography. And you can look for those examples of studs, stairs. Non-repeating would be your patterns. Patterns indicate problems. And this is a big problem. This is a research project. We could kill the flashover, 12 by 12 box. Ignition to flashover with one couch. 3.5 minutes. Nothing in this room besides drywall and a wood floor. See that, subtle gray convection come out the door? I want you to watch as this plays. Watch how the wood grain is clear and clear. I don't know how it's doing that. Energy's hitting it. Keep watching. You ever been told to look for a descending thermal layer or neutral plane? They're not the same. Neutral plane is visible in opening optically. Thermal layer depends on the camera. In this case, it's that white line below the yellow. Watch as this continues to heat up what's below it. People think I'm below the thermal layer, I'm cooling. No, you're not. You're below a broiler. Look at the floor. It's getting brighter. I wonder why. Because the broiler is getting closer to the floor. The couch is in the far right corner. Look what's creeping across the floor. It's not dog pee. That is a lot of heat. If it's making plywood light up like that, what's about to happen to the plywood? Now we have oranges, reds. We've got sheetrock falling down. We've got fire rolling across now when we see the red. Most times look at it degrading. And I'm about to show you what old cameras used to call whiteout. We now call saturation. And I'll show you what it looks like when a thermal imaging camera saturates and catches on fire. As mine did, because it's a little cut in the bottom of it, looking towards the front door. The floor's on fire, everything's on fire. We're losing all detail. We've got complete saturation, and 3, 2, 1, done. And now my camera's on fire. That's what saturation is. So if you want to know what to replace whiteout, it's this. Hope you never see it, because if you're in here and the camera's on fire, you'll probably be on fire. That's not good. Here to conclude, to help you with more, that's our YouTube channel on the left. The Seek Thermal resource link will have this webinar when you get it uploaded to it. Will be almost 20 hours of actual webinars in that one link. And if you want a copy of this presentation, you can scan that QR code on the right. It'll take you straight to it, which will allow you to use, download, whatever. We just ask that you cite it and got it from us. Those are all resources for you to help you learn, educate, and help your department, because we want you to win. We want you to win. We want you to help the citizen, help your family, and get home. I'm over the ego. I'm over all of who's right or wrong. I just want you to win. I survived a 34-year career. I want some young people who also survive and go home with families. And if you're going to be coming to FDIC, this is your invitation. Come see us. We'll be there. We got 2 hot classes that are sold out Monday and Tuesday, led by instructor Thomas Anderson and the entire Insight cadre. We even had international guests coming this year. Stefan Feitz from Australia is coming. We've got a huge crew coming. And then Thursday through Saturday, this is a special invitation to Seek Thermal. We will be at the outside booth at Lucas Oil Stadium, partnering with the Max Firebox, doing live fire demonstrations with the TIC. We'll be there to talk with you. The instructors will be there, Joey Baxa, Thomas Anderson, and others. Thomas Anderson is going to be providing a general conference lecture in addition to that. And our good friend Joe DeVito is also doing a conference lecture. All kind of opportunities for thermal engineering training. My friend Scott Herbert from Sure Sales and Lion's going to be there doing some demos out on Lucas Oil. But there's going to be so much stuff this year. Just go check it out if you're going to be there. It's free if you've already paid for your general conference thing. You can walk up, ask questions, play with thermal imaging cameras. But we want you to know about it. People always say, I didn't know anything about it. Well, you do now. And if you need to contact me, my website has a contact us button. That's my email. That's my phone number. We post on social media every single day. Myself and Tim Mills from my organization manage the social media platform. It's got too big for one person. Please make sure you check out what we post. If you have questions, you look into the resource, shoot us an email. Be glad to help. Sorry, I went over by a little bit. Jordan, I hand it back to you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Andy, for all that information. So if you guys have any further questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out directly to Andy or myself. As he mentioned, if you have any questions, if there was something that he mentioned that you wanted to go back and reference, we will also be sending out a recording of this webinar to everyone who registered within the next day. So thank you again, Andy, for your time, and thank you to everyone who registered for today's webinar.
Thank you, Jordan. Have a good day. God bless.